Why are baseball games at night? The bats sleep all day. Hey, shh. Welcome back to Not Another Needless Sequel, where we watch movies and propose unnecessary prequels, sequels, reboots, and remakes. My name is Kane, and this week, if you only see one movie this year, you ought to get out more often, with 1988's The Naked Gun from the Files of Police Squad, which is a ridiculous title. But apparently, this movie comes from a TV show that was called Police Squad, if I remember my information I looked up correctly. So most people just know this movie as The Naked Gun, obviously. But, so just getting into this movie, I had never seen it, but it was probably one of the funniest movies I had seen in a long time. I know it's hella old, like I said, 1988, but it was something I always avoided because it just looked like something I wouldn't enjoy, honestly. But from the very beginning, I mean, this slapstick, screwball, however you want to describe it, kind of comedy was just really hitting me. So we see Officer Nordberg, who's played by O.J. Simpson, oddly enough. He is trying to bust a heroin operation that's run by a man named Vincent Ludwig, and he is killed. He actually, like, some of the funniest parts of the movie to me were this scene. Because when he shows up, he gets outside this door and he goes to kick the door. And instead of the door kicking open like any other cop movie, his foot just goes right through the door and is just hanging in the door. And everybody in the room slowly pulls their gun out because they've got time while this cop is trying to unstick his leg. So he kicks in the door. He says, "Drop your guns." And one guy literally drops his gun. Everybody else is just like, obviously, we have you outnumbered. They end up shooting him like a ridiculous amount of times, but it's not a gory, bloody movie because he actually lives from this. And in fact, when they shoot him, they do a whole gag where he like falls backwards, he hits his head on a low ceiling, then he falls to the side, puts his hand on a hot furnace, he backs from that, he leans against some wet paint. He falls into a wedding cake that comes from nowhere, steps into a bear trap. It's just outrageous. And that's the kind of comedy through this whole movie. Now, as I always say with any comedy movie, I unfortunately can't describe every comedic moment in the movie. But, you know, this will probably be a pretty quick episode for that reason. Not to mention, you know, I don't have my co-host as usual. My co-host should return the next episode for those of you that hate this. But here we are. So, our main character is Lieutenant Frank Drebin, and he is given 24 hours to clear Nordberg's name because what happens is, while he's in the hospital, they test his jacket and they find heroin traces on it, and they believe that Nordberg is somehow involved in this heroin ring and that he wasn't actually trying to break it up. Not to mention, they're also very busy because the Queen of England is coming to visit LA, and apparently this police force is in charge of her security. So he's got 24 hours to do this. You know, he's looking into everything, trying to figure out what's going on, and eventually he is brought to meet Vincent Ludwig, who is actually the guy running this heroin wing, but he doesn't know that yet. Ludwig, of course, gets his assistant Jane, who is, you know, a conventionally attractive woman. Of course, they do a whole thing where Frank is falling in love with her, and Jane is supposed to get close to him in order to, like, find out what he knows, and little do we know that Ludwig actually has a way of hypnotizing people to kill other people. So he has been working on this, and he ultimately does have Jane hypnotized and is going to activate her to kill Drebin, but that's not till much later. So he also is going to use this hypnosis assassination thing to kill the Queen, and he attempts to do it to Nordberg, who is in the hospital after he was already shot by these people. Luckily, Frank Drebin is there to stop all that, and he is trying to prove to his police captain, you know, that this is going on. He ends up finding, like, a note that confirms that Ludwig is going to attempt this assassination, and he thinks it happens at this party where he's presenting a old musket to the Queen. He tries to run and jump on the Queen to protect her from the musket bullet, but of course he wasn't actually going to use this musket, and he ends up just getting fired for basically tackling the Queen. So when they were actually going to do it is at a baseball game, and this baseball game assassination attempt doesn't go well because Drebin is continuing to change disguises. He first dresses up as the person that's supposed to sing the national anthem. they realize it's him. He ends up going into disguise as the umpire, and they do a whole montage of him just being an umpire for this baseball game while he's feeling up every baseball player trying to find which one has the gun. But none of them have the gun. The gun is actually hidden in the ground. And Ludwig activates his tone that activates his assassins, and an assassin goes right for the queen. Luckily, they are able to stop it, and everything is proven right. And then Ludwig falls over a banister and hits the ground, and he is just comically run over by a bus, then a steamroller, and then a marching band. But unfortunately, the marching band steps on his activation thing, and it activates Jane, his assistant, to try and assassinate Drebin. Luckily, Jane and Drebin have formed a relationship through this movie and are in love, and he's able to break her out of her mind control just by offering up, the words, "I love you." Anyway, that is pretty much the movie. I did speed through it because one thing I am going to do for this episode, since it's just me, and, we may do in the future, is I'm going to just do all my trivia at the end. So, before I get into my rating, here's some bits of trivia I found interesting. On the DVD commentary of the movie, during the undercover stakeout scenes with Nordberg, who, as I mentioned to you guys, was played by O.J. Simpson, the writer, Jerry Zucker, he said, "Okay, here's O.J. planning his murder." Fucking crazy, wild thing to say, but hilarious. And now, you might recall I mentioned that the main bad guy, Ludwig, is run over by a steamroller. You're not going to believe this. In 1988, when this movie came out, this was one of 3 comedies that have a scene where the villain is run over by a steamroller. Steamroller comedy was at its fucking peak in 1988, apparently. There was a movie called A Fish Called Wanda, and then Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Both of those feature a steamroller kill. Now, Leslie Nielsen, who played Lieutenant Frank Drebin, after he died in 2010, ESPN published an obituary for Enrico Palazzo, which was the name of the singer that he impersonated in the baseball game. They called him a true Renaissance man. He umpired the game after performing the national anthem. Palazzo was the first and only umpire to eject another umpire from a major league game. He also is believed to be the first and only umpire to use an upright vacuum cleaner to tidy up home plate. This is all references to the movie, but, it was kind of a nice, funny thing ESPN did. So, also, in the original theatrical cut of this movie, Vincent Ludwig shoots Frank Drebin during the standoff at the baseball stadium, causing his umpire chest protector to deflate. And you can actually see this in the movie. Without seeing the actual shot, you notice that at some point in the movie, his umpire cover is just flattened. So there was a comical scene of it, deflating with air, like it was a pool or something. But they took this out apparently because they didn't want people to think that an umpire chest protector could actually stop a bullet. And my last piece of trivia is the henchman that falls into the vat. So there's a scene where he's chasing down a henchman to try and gain some information, and he chases him into this dugout dog's meat plant. And the henchman ends up falling into a vat. And the henchman's actually wearing this big-ass ring, and later on in the movie, you see the main bad guy, Vincent Ludwig, eating a hot dog, and he pulls this ring out of his mouth. Disgusting. Disgusting. Anyway, I rated this movie a 4 out of 5. I thought that it was fucking hilarious, honestly. I don't think it's going to hit for everyone. You've got to like this kind of comedy, but I'm excited to maybe watch the others. And I also had somebody recommend to me the movie Airplane because they said it's the same kind of comedy. And I just missed all this. It was before my time. This movie had a budget of $14.5 million, and it had a box office of $152.4 million, so it made a ton of fucking money. And on Rotten Tomatoes, it shows because the film has a rating of 88% based on 139 reviews, with an average rating of 7.7 out of 10. Now, obviously, Frank Drebin is a kind of goofy cop. It's the comedy of it. So, I have here a list of 5, we'll say, goofy cops, in a way. And I would like to know, I would like you to think about, I guess, which of these cops could solve a hard case. You have to imagine your own case, I guess. I wanted to jokingly go with, could they solve the Kira case from the anime Death Note? But if you don't know what that is, then come up with your own. Could they solve Jack the Ripper? Something like that. So Frank Drebin's number 1. I don't know. He pulled off some pretty mean feats in this movie, so I would like to say he could. Chief Wiggum from The Simpsons, that's just a flat no. You ever seen that? Ridiculous, man. Now, I haven't seen all The Simpsons. Maybe I'm missing some crazy episode where he is the world's greatest detective, but I'm doubting it. James Carter from Rush Hour, he could do it, as long as he had Jackie Chan with him. Doofy from Scary Movie, no. And Nicholas Angel from Hot Fuzz, I could see it, I guess. But it also has been a while since I've seen Hot Fuzz, so you'll have to forgive me if you're listening to this and thinking, hell no. So this movie was followed up with 2 direct sequels, and as of this Friday, we'll have another sequel in the form of a soft reboot starring Liam Neeson, which I'm excited to see. Liam Neeson's actually going to play Frank Drebin's son, so like I said, soft reboot. So my sequel, though, however, is going to be a prequel, and I'm calling it The Naked Gun Premature Evacuation. This will be a prequel showing a young Frank joining the police force and going through the academy. Some of the other cadets bully Frank, but he finds a friend in Nordberg. Frank eventually learns the bully cadets are working with some dirty cops already on the police force, and they are fast-tracking them to increase their numbers. Frank and Nordberg begin attempting to sabotage the dirty cadets, and I think that this could be, a big chunk of the comedy. And that's another struggle with making sequels to this, is I can't write out every joke. I'm not a comedian, and, I may not it would take too long for me to sit here and try and think of jokes that I could put in this movie. So, but anyway, I think this would be a huge opportunity, as them sabotaging cadets in the police force. Eventually, of course, Frank and Nordberg will be kicked out of the program for doing this, and Frank will feel bad for getting Nordberg involved and come up with a plan to reveal their misdeeds by disguising himself as a criminal and recording their conversation. Now, to record their conversation and doing his criminal disguise, he learns that they are planning to plant a bomb in the mayor's office. And with this, they're going to, of course, hold the mayor for ransom, threaten to blow up the bomb. They evacuate everybody. And he's recording all this, and he plans to take out the bomb. And it almost goes off without a hitch until the police captain is revealed to be dirty as well. And they discover Drebin in disguise. And just when they're going to execute him, one of the cops will pull off their mask. And it's going to be a comical, pulling off their skin, and it reveals to be a different person kind of thing. And it'll be Nordberg, who is actually broadcasting this whole recording to some nearby reporters who are already running the story. And Nordberg will have his father, who's also a cop, already having disarmed the bomb, being way ahead of everything. After that, a gunfight will ensue, and of course our heroes live to fight another day while the dirty cops die comically. I know that's fucked up, but, I think that is the best way to deal with this, so as to make it fold into the modern, Police Squad show, which I never saw, so maybe I'm stepping on something that already happened in that show. That's what I got. Sorry for the short episode. Like I said, with comedies, it's always typically a shorter one anyway. Without a co-host, it's a little shorter. And, next week we are switching to a new kind of format. We're going to call it Season 3 now. Just to fix up some things, change some things. And I would love any recommendations, anything you guys want to see. But thank you so much for listening. We do so appreciate it. If you want to talk movies with us, you can find us on TikTok, Instagram, Letterboxd, Threads, and Blue Sky. We are NansPod everywhere. And if you'd like to vote on whose sequel idea was the best, come by our YouTube channel for the polls, or you can let us know your idea across our socials or at needlesssequel@gmail.com. Links, as always, will be wherever you're listening. If I could ask you for one thing, it's to share our show with someone and leave us a review. That is how we get new listeners. Of course, I also ask that you come back for more Needless Sequels. Next week, like I said, we're starting Season 3, and we'll be doing so with Freaky Friday in preparation for Freakier Friday. Anyway, take care of yourselves, everyone. We will see you next week.